Hello, hello, people. This is RexRed. I am back. We have another exciting tutorial for you today. I have to just make sure that our sounds are all correct and that we are streaming properly. Go live. And we're going to check this out. It says we've got an excellent connection. And let's see what we have here. I gotta go to YouTube and just make sure our audio is good so I don't end up with a mess here. That's this. Your channel. And live, it says we are live. Let's see how our audio sounds. Okay, that sounds good. Alright, so today is a tutorial. We're going to change this to use arcade. How to use in your song in Cakewalk. In your song in Cakewalk by BandLab. I guess that can go like that and like that. Save. Control V, I mean. Save. Okay. As you can see, we have got, I'm going to switch over this computer. We have got arcade here, and I have it but this is not what I was asked. I was asked by somebody asked me a question yesterday on that they had been trying to get arcade to work for them for about a year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this and delete track folder, and that will delete that. So we have no sound. I'm going to close Cakewalk. Save changes, no. And we'll minimize this. And then I'm going to open Cakewalk again as soon as it allows itself to get closed. There we go. And there's all my those things are always popping there. Alright, so great. Alright, so my doctor's appointments are now public. Okay, so we're going to go new project. Okay, this opens, you click on new project, you open Cakewalk and click on the basic project. And I am, my project is set to run at 96 kilohertz and 24-bit. So 96 kilohertz and 24-bit. Your project may be like at 48 kilohertz and 24-bit. It doesn't matter, okay? Just make sure that you have a project open here. Now, you don't need these two tracks right off the bat. Oops, I just added one. So we're going to delete these two tracks. You don't have to delete them. I suppose you could leave them in, but I just guess for clarity's sake, we'll delete them. Okay. Now, if you have arcade installed properly, when you go to insert up here and then you go to soft synth, okay, and you click on that, you should see output down here, okay, and it will say if you have the latest version of Cakewalk, it will say output here, and then it will also say arcade and VST3 if you have the latest version. The latest version now tells us which VST plugin that we're using. So you want to use VST3. If it says VST2 also, you want to use the VST3 one, okay? And so you click on that. Now this screen will pop up, and you want to make sure that you have MIDI source selected You want to make sure that synth track folder is selected, and that this first synth audio output is selected, and the synth property page, okay? And you don't need any, this one's grayed out, and ask every time, keep that selected so it asks, so you can just verify. And so you will have these 4 boxes selected, and that one's grayed out, and you want to leave that one so it asks every time, just so you can verify that these are what. So you want the MIDI source, synth track folder, first synth audio output, and the synth property page. You want those 4 selected, okay? And you click OK. Now what's going to happen is Arcade will open, and it will also insert 3 tracks here, and Arcade will open. Now this is, I don't know exactly where the person who asked me to do this tutorial, I don't know where they got hung up, okay? So, but if you're able to get other things to sound in your project, and you're just not able to get Arcade to sound, because you want to be good down here and click on and drag this up, and you'll see your master bin, and you want to make sure, now you go up here to this custom drop down, and you select all so that it will show you all of the parameters on your tracks, and here too. See, if you just have custom, it gets rid of a few, okay? And you want all of the ins and outs and all that stuff showing, okay? So now here on this master track, it should be going out to stereo out to your audio interface, okay? Now if you can insert an audio track and just quickly record your mic, input your mic, and get sound, and you click play and it plays what you record, okay, then it's not Cakewalk itself, then that's giving you your problem. It's more, it's got to be how you're using Arcade, okay? So now once you it will insert these 3 tracks here. One is the track folder, and the other is the MIDI track, and the other one is the audio track for the MIDI track, okay? So we'll just expand these. You don't need to expand the track folder. You just need these 2 bottom tracks. The track folder is just a container that holds these 2 tracks, okay? So now you can either double click on this here, and that will open Arcade, or you can double click on this one and that will open Arcade. It's still the same thing, okay? It's just 2 different ways to get to the same place, okay? Now if you have a certain key that you want your song to be in, this is where you would change that information, okay? And the key, pick what key. If you want C major, it doesn't always work, okay? And that's because sometimes the loops and kits that Arcade gives you, they're, say, maybe in a, like in an F key, and to move them all the way down to C is going to make them, it just sound unnatural, okay? Because they do come in a certain key. There's a certain, and that's what this original button down here is for. So it says loops will load in their original key, and you might want to do that just especially when you're starting out, so you can hear how the loops were intended to be, okay? And so that bypasses this, okay? Now you want to click either on kits or loops, okay? Now we're in the browse part, okay? Not in the play part, we're in the browse part. So you want to click on kits or loops. And Now, I've forgotten the difference. Okay, let's go back here. How do you go back? Browse. Okay, up top near. Now, when we go to loops, okay, I think, all right, this is just a loop. All right, so kits are like a whole group of sounds that kind of fit together. All right, and loops are just one thing. Okay, so and they loop, the, they'll play over and over, and so you can kind of loop them, and they'll play over and over again. And if you want to play it again and kind of see what it looks like, all right, and so these are your loops. And but what's really, and up in here you can search and say you want voice, voice. So you might want like a human voice, somebody talking.
Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, that.
And there aren't many male voices here. You would think out of all of arcade. But that's what you get. Okay, now that's out of the loops. Okay, so now, but out of these kits there are lots and lots of them. Okay, and the kits are pretty much where you're going to want to go. Okay, so what you do is you listen to the kits, or you do a search, and you could search for arpeggio, like arp. I am going to have to sneeze. Okay, I'm sorry if that, I should have done it this way because I actually have a mute button. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to, now I'll explain more about what these kits are as we progress ahead. But you can get a rough idea of what they are by just clicking. Let's try this 80s one. And as you can see, this 80s, these are a lot of different things. There are a lot of different sounds mixed together, okay? And so it gives you kind of an idea of the kind of sounds that you're going to find in this group. So, all right, so let's try this one. Now the thing is that when you have an arcade membership, I believe this is how this works, that as soon as you click on this download button, all right, you own it, okay? It's yours. I think it's yours like forever. Even if you don't pay for your arcade subscription like the next month, you still can use these things that you've downloaded. You own them, okay? You can add them to your favorites so they're easy to find, okay? But as soon as you click that download button, this arrow button with the line under it, you own it, okay? So If you don't plan on keeping Arcade for a long time, you might want to just spend a whole night like downloading everything possible. Now you want to double check and make sure that what I say is right, but I believe it is. So that once you click on something, that's a nice little pop beat. All right, so let's download that. Okay, so now what I believe you do, this is how I've done it, is once you have the play button, once you have clicked the download and this turns gray like that, then you double click on it, okay? And this screen opens. And then all of those different sounds that you just heard all mixed together, they get put into this. All the different sounds. Okay? You don't have to use them all in your song. You might just use one of them, you know? Okay, now what's really nice about this is now if I'm gonna push this down so you can see my keyboard also. And I'll pull the keyboard out a little bit more. Now, so I can use my keyboard to access these. All right, so as you can see now, when I push a button on my keyboard, it plays these sounds. And these have to do with stutter effects, and I've forgotten what these do, okay? But it's been a while since I've done this. Now, if I hold this sound here, you can hear that pitch bend there. Now, what Arcade has done here, which is rather clever, is instead of giving you the whole synthesizer with about 50 different knobs, okay, they've given you the knobs that they think are going to be the artist who created this kit has given you the knobs that they think are going to be the most helpful in what would you call it, morphing the sound, because this is like, usually you want a nice pitch LFO, and that's a nice one there. So okay, so now I'm able to play these with my synth keyboard, but if you want to put them into your song, now you should be able to just do that, to just insert this in, okay? Then you open this up, and then you go to browse, and you should be able to pick one of these. That's instantaneous. We'll download that one. Now I own that, okay? And they should just play, okay? Oh, that's really nice. And I believe there's also a way to change these. Like if you want to change them, there's a way to change these and bring in other kinds of effects that alter the sound. And I'm going to show you how to automate these also so that they actually move all by themselves and all. All right, if I can remember how to do it, okay? So, okay, so, okay, if I, and the black keys modify. See how that kind of breaks it up? So if I had that human voice talking, this would be a really nice thing to like give it that kind of like thing sound. And so if you hold the black key while the human voice is talking, and it will go and then go back to talking and looping back again. Okay, so these are all looping around, okay? And you can edit them. You can take out slices. You can change the filter of the way it sounds, the way it comes in, the way it sustains, the way it decays, all of that. You can change the pitch, and you can rearrange these. You can copy and paste. You can reverse it. There's all kinds of really cool stuff you can do. This is a really fully fledged synthesizer, and it impacts all of the sounds that they have on these. Okay, in the browse. So, how do you get these into your song? Okay, well, you have when you put these three tracks in, and one, like I said, is just a folder that holds the other two in here. It puts a MIDI track and it puts an audio track. And the MIDI track, if you notice this, when I hit the synthesizer, it these are note on. It hits a note on, and so when I hit the synthesizer, this jumps up, and that means it's a note on. It's sending an event into Cakewalk. All right, so if you want these to be in your song, and then so what it's doing is sending the MIDI event in, and it's pushing that particular playing that sound, and the audio from that sound is routing itself into this track. So what you see is if I turn this on and hit play, that's a really nice bass right there. That is really nice. I really like that a lot. So that is what it's doing. Now, it didn't just record that. It just showed us what it was, the audio that was here. I would have to hit record and have it, and I could record into this track. But that's not how you do this, okay? So we're going to turn that back off again. The way you do this is that you go to this MIDI track, make sure it's selected, okay, by selecting here, okay, just the MIDI track, make sure everything's not selected, or both of these are not selected, just the MIDI track, okay, and then right click here and click view and click piano roll, okay. Now this takes you into the piano roll, and so this piano is just like my keyboard that you see here in front of me. It's the same idea, okay, as the keyboard. But what it allows you to do is play the sounds. There. And these are the sounds here. Oh, I must have hit that button. Okay, here. And those are the sounds. Now, if I put a okay, if I put this here and click play, see, now I didn't have to push anything. Let's make that go a little longer. And so now if I go here and put and then okay, but this isn't the way you do it, okay? So the way you do it is the way I do it, okay? Is I just make one instance. Okay, so now that's this one note here from the keyboard. Now if we go back here to arcade and you double click here, I believe that's this note. Yeah. So that is like the C, which C is it? It's C6. Okay, C6 on your keyboard. So it would be this C right here. All right. So if I draw in this event, okay, it will put a note on, and it will, and I drag the note, and it shows how far that I want the note to go, and then so it puts basically three events, okay? Note on, how long I want to hold that note, and note off. 3 events. That's what MIDI is, okay? It also puts in how hard I hit the note. Okay, now if you drag this little thing up down here, and if I have the note selected, I can draw here, and this means I hit the note very quietly. All right, I mean very lightly on the keyboard. All right. All right, now if I draw this up like that, that means I really hit the key hard, okay? Now, you don't hear any difference there because nothing's been programmed in for the velocity of this, okay? You know, and velocity is the word. It's how hard you hit the note, okay? So basically MIDI is putting 4 events here. I think it's actually 5 too, because it tells you which note it is, which is the C6, okay? Note on, how long you held it, okay, is another piece of information. And when you turned it, when you let up on the key, and how hard you hit the note, okay? That's the events. That's most of what MIDI is, okay? And so instead of having to, the computer having to figure out all of the complexity of that sound, all it has to do instead is just say, turn it on, how long it wants. That's another piece of data, is how long, and another piece of data is when you lift your finger and how hard you hit it. That's on, instead of thousands of bits and samples that it has to compute, all it has to compute is note on, how long, note off, and how hard. And that's only 4 pieces of data, okay? So that's what enables this to work, okay? But this sound here, this is the MIDI track, okay? And that's where you put your MIDI event, okay? But this sound is being fed out of this MIDI track into here. So when I click play, you can see it here. And you see, that's where I change. You don't change these, okay? You don't change these, the volume here or the pan here. You change it here, okay? Where your MIDI track comes out and comes into here, you change the volume here. You change it here. And you change the pan here. Like left and right. And if this is going like, if it's, sorry about that, it was so loud, but if you see it going up there, that's where you change your gain. So it's not coming into this channel, into this track too loud, okay? And to get rid of that, you click up in there and it goes away. So you make sure, because this isn't, this, as you see, if I turn this off, it is actually showing the output. So I can show you a little bit more about this, but how this kind of works. But if you open your Pro channel up here, and you turn this on up here, and you turn on your compressor or your EQ, okay, then what happens is, I'll turn this down a little bit. Now, as I turn this gain up, you'll see that went red there. That means it's too high, okay? And I usually like to keep it in the green, maybe a little bit of orange, okay? But I like to keep it in the green. That's kind of my secret to getting headroom, so that all my tracks don't end up so loud that they distort my master bus, okay? So I try to keep them in the green. That may not be the right way to do it, but that's how I do it. And so as long as this is green, you have it set. Then you can set the other half. Okay, here. And if you really need more, you can bring it up more. But okay. So now if I click on this freeze button, okay, what it will do is it will turn that into a WAV file. And now if I take this WAV file, I could drag it down here, or let's just copy it, okay? Now I have two of them, but let's mute this, all right? Then I could technically get rid of all of this stuff, okay? I could get rid of it and just keep the WAV file, okay? But then I can't go back and say, okay, well, I didn't really care for, I could unfreeze that, okay? And say, I didn't really care for it. I need this to go, I want this to, all right, now here's where I'm going to show you something really cool, how to automate these little sliders, okay? And the way you do that now is you're in this they're gonna create envelopes in this track, okay? And the way you do that is you open this up, and then you click on this W up here, and that puts the write enable, okay? So that you can write envelopes, all right? And then you just click spacebar on your keyboard. And look what it did. See, it wrote this. Okay, now when I go back, now if I take that right off, okay, now watch what happens when I click play. See this? That's moving all by itself. another one. Like, okay, let's try another one. So let's go with, as long as I don't move that again, it will stay the same. And while that right is on, I could technically do it again and record over that and say, oh, I did it a little different. I want to do it a little. Or here's a noise filter. All right, and let's go now. Oh, I got. Oh, excuse me. Okay. All right, so now when we close this down, now you're going to see I have two of them, okay? One of them is the noise one, and the other one was the reverb one, okay? So now when we open this up, see, this is how you morph your sound. All right, excellent, Marquet. I think I'm not sure how you say your name, and Steve, welcome. Okay, and I'm going to answer your question also, Steve. So, Marquet, Marquet, I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know if you pronounce the S's Marquez, but I'll call you Marquet for now. And Steve, I will also answer your question about what an arpeggio means in Cakewalk. Okay. And the biggest thing that sticks out, if you know what an arpeggio is, it's just, it's like a pattern that the notes go through. But what it really means in Cakewalk, to me, the biggest thing that sticks out about an arpeggio in Cakewalk is that you want those notes to follow Cakewalk's beat. Okay, that's the most important thing that sticks out in my mind, because I don't just like this arpeggio. This arpeggio is following the beat here. Okay, now let me go here, and we're gonna go. I got to turn on my my control panel up. You hit C to bring that back if it disappears. Okay, now when I go into Edit, Preferences, and go down here to Metronome, I can turn the metronome on during playback. Apply, or you just click close and it will apply it. So now when I click play, so Arcade looks at these arpeggios, okay, and it looks at the project and sees that it's 120 beats per minute, and so it stretches or shrinks the arpeggio. Now if I were to take this arpeggio and go down to like 60 beats per minute, see, and that is the magic, okay, of Cakewalk, and how this arcade, and that's the same with just about any arpeggio or any synthesizer that you use in Cakewalk, is that if you use an arpeggio, it's going to look at your beats per minute, and like if I go faster, Okay, so this is going to so now you can kind of see how this works. Now, if so, this gives you, and once you get your, all right, and this now, if you go into this, if you click on this little thing down here, this thing, what it does is it drops down and it shows you your envelope, your envelopes that you just created, and that allows you to click in these and move them around. Now I'm getting, and you say if I say, well, this wasn't quite smooth enough, and there gives you some other tools, like that tool is the select tool, which allows me to select a bunch of them and move them. Okay, or I can select one at a time. Now, because I'm in the select mode, I can't really move them unless, now I can select this and move that and cut. I can, if I can, and this has snap on, there's snapping, so if I turn snap on, I can move it wherever I want it, okay? And it won't snap to the beat, okay? And so this is how you can then go in and take your that recording that I did of, now I could bring it way down or I could bring it up. You know, I can do pretty much anything now with these different envelopes, and these are called nodes. And so you just click on the nodes. I believe that's what they're called. They're pretty much universally nodes. You have nodes also in Adobe Illustrator kind of thing, and I think they're called nodes there also. Just in case, now you could thin them out a little bit if you want. You can also add nodes here. I think if you double click, yeah, you just double click and you can add a node, and you can hold it and hit delete, or right click and delete it. Okay, so this is how you are able to. And Cakewalk, I don't believe that any DAW really is as nice with editing these things as Cakewalk. You can zoom in on these so that you can really get at them and really fine tune them the way you really want them, okay? So this is a really nice aspect. Now, what if, now I'm going to go back here, and you can, as you can see this right, I can turn the right off, and now they're kind of pretty much set in stone. They're not going to, I can't alter them unless I turn right back on. And see, that allows me to morph the sound over time. Okay? Yeah. So that allows me to morph the sound over time. Now, if I want to add, now I think I accidentally added, yeah, I accidentally, no, I didn't. I added this when I dragged that down into there, but I got rid of it. Okay, so I'm going to delete this track here and say, okay, so now maybe I want another arcade sound to go with this. Instead of going in here and just adding another note in here, and so I can say, well, let's go click on this and add. All right, now I could add another note here, but it's going to get the same effects that were all there in the other. I turn that snap back on. It's going to get the same envelopes applied to this. Let's slow this down a little bit to 100. Oh, let's go to 120. All right, so that's kind of messy because then they're being affected in the same exact way with those sliders, those things that I slid up. So that's not the way to do it, even though you could put other sounds in right in this MIDI track. So what you do, and this is what's nice, is, and I recommend this, there's like, even with drums, that you can create different channels within the same instance of an instrument, but I prefer to always just go up here and insert soft synth and add another arcade, okay? And then that enables me to then go and pick another loop, another kit, and let's say this kit, mildly fried, let's do that one. Anytime now. It's not letting me download it. Alright, let's try a different one. Heavens Above. What's wrong, arcade? I'm not sure why it's not letting me download. Oh, there we go. I guess it was just thinking. Alright, so let's double click on this and see what we have here. Alright, that wasn't quite what I was looking for. I'm just looking for a drum or something, so I didn't hear any drums there. Let's double click this and see if we got a drum beat. That's a little bit too much drum. Alright, let's see what we got. Well, I think what's wrong is you have to put these on original or they're going to sound like terrible, okay? You know, you're the artist. You'll be making up your decisions on what you want to use. Alright, I'm going to try this one. Okay, so we're going to try that little drum beat there. So I'm going to right click here, view, and go to piano roll view. And so we'll add piano roll here. Alright, now when we click play. Oh, I didn't quite start it at the beginning here. Okay, and we can drag that even further if we want. Alright, so that gives us now another instance of arcade, okay? And now we can rinse and repeat here. We can go open up arcade, turn on the right with these drums. Alright, so as you can see, that just wrote a bunch of these new. It wrote 4 different envelopes in here. So they didn't seem to have much of an impact, actually. Uh, a little bit. They're very subtle. This one, okay. You can see they're moving around. Okay, so this now you can see there's 4 of them going around here, and this one decided to just and you can there again go through them by clicking this and manually moving them around. And they don't really, a lot of times, unless they're pitch oriented, they really don't have to have a lot of resolution to them. You can kind of just move them around like this, and you can thin these out if you don't really want, so if you can get a little bit more control over them. And then you go up here, you can turn them all off by hitting that W up there, and that globally turns things off. If you have a bunch of tracks selected, you can hit the S and it will turn them all off, or you can hit M and it mutes everything. They're global. So this gives you now 2 of these. And so now you can go back and now rinse and repeat. You can add another instance of arcade. Now, if you're not aware of what arcade is, it's a subscription you pay every month, and it's by output. So just look up arcade by output, and you can check it out. And you download and install it on your computer, and it gives you, and I believe when you click on this download button, you own them forever. So if I click on this little dance one, I haven't done this a lot. I'm usually the kind of person that goes in and just spends like 2 days clicking on everything, and then I can turn my subscription off for a while. But I've just decided to pay them I think it's like $6 or $7 a month. It's not very expensive, and it just allows me this extra dimension to my sound. So let's see, Mind Monkey. Let's see what this is. When I double click there, now Alright, I'm going to see if I can get this to go into C. I think it's C major. What are these other ones? Let's see. This one. What's this? G minor. Okay. So let's see if we can get this to go to G minor. G. Where's G minor? G minor. And when you change these pitches here, it very rarely works well, but every once in a while you can move it up a little bit or down a little bit. So let's just go back here to browse and try something else here. What's this? Suavecito. All right. All right. Let's see. See, this kind of works now. I'm not sure why this got closed off here. No. Did I like make that smaller or something? Not sure. There's like usually a little thing here, which it might have been the browse. Yeah, here. Now let's see what the original is. That gives you now it's saying right here recommended 150 to 180 beats per second. So this is supposed to be fast, and my now that's recommended, but you can slow it down. But that's why his voice kind of maybe sounded like sort of slow. This is so it's 150 to 180. That's like really fast. Okay. Maybe they cut the beat in half. I'm not sure, but so they give you the recommended. What I don't see is the recommended key here, which would have been helpful. And it just says original, which all right. Now that's when I was clicking play here. Now if I take this and go up to, let's say 170. Now let's try this. Let's try. Let's go down to something really low and see what happens. 160. Okay, I think I have to actually slow down. Now you see that's what happens when you change this too much. It just like they really don't like to be taken from their original habitat, so to speak. See, I can go 180, but and it's not telling me. It really should tell you right here its native key, and it's not doing that. So search, show more. So these are things you can add in. Now browse. It may actually have picked these because they're in G minor. But I don't think that's how it works, and because it wouldn't say original unless it would, because of the time. Okay, now we're up to, let's go to 120. Okay, we don't. Okay, it's playing, that's actually playing the beat that I've got loaded here. Alright, so I'm not sure how you get it to play the whole beat here. Edit. Okay, that's to edit that sound. Let's to edit those. So now if I go back to this browse and I click original, that's what's going to... No, I don't know why it's stuck on that one now. Here. Alright, you have to actually click this. Okay, let's go down here to stuttered. That's really stuttered. Definitely is. Electric Ocean. This is 110 to about 100 to 120. All right, let's try this one. Now double click and now this is playing in G minor, okay? This is giving me it in G minor, so see, so you really, with this, oh, why do I freeze a track? Okay, well, when, let me see if I can, it's kind of complicated, but I think I can make it simple. You can see I'm working with MIDI here. And what happens is your computer, the MIDI and the wave files are at war with each other, okay? The wave files want to take over your computer, and the MIDI files want to take over your computer. And so they're fighting over the brain of your computer. And so as you start to make your song, you put the songs in through MIDI like this, but what happens is the more, like if you put like a bunch of vocals and a bunch of wave files into your computer, the MIDI starts stuttering and it starts dropping out notes because because your computer is putting more effort into the wave area. And the way you kind of change that is you go into your audio interface here, and you change, and if you give it more buffers in your audio interface, like bring it up, then it will play the waves. It will give less emphasis to the MIDI and more emphasis to the waves. And if you switch it the other way, it gives. So I'm not really sure exactly how a lot of that works, but I know that what happens is you end up with this battle between the MIDI and the wave files. And so if you want the MIDI to go really be articulate especially when you go to record, because you want, when you play, you don't want, when I play the keyboard, I don't want to hear a long delay between the time I push the MIDI, especially if you're playing piano. You don't want to hear two sets of what you're doing. You don't want to hear, kind of press the notes and have to wait like a split second to hear what's happening. So you lower these samples in your audio interface. You lower them down to like 96 or 128 or even 64 if your computer can handle it. So you lower the samples down, the buffer size, and usually 512 is sort of okay. All right, but if you can get even lower, then you'll be able to hear that MIDI play. But what happens is but then when the MIDI's playing, when you lower that buffer size, then your wave files start to get noisy sounding, and they start to lose the quality, and they get kind of hissy, and sometimes they get crackly. because it's giving the emphasis to the MIDI. And so so you have to, in order to put the MIDI in and have it play, like I'll put a piano in here and I'll show you. Okay, so I think that's pretty much the arcade, what I'm going to show you about arcade today. So but I'll give you this extra. So I'm going to put a soft synth in. We'll go to Cakewalk Dimension, and I will pick a piano. And, well, an electric piano sounds a little bit. Now, if you notice, when I push it, the sound, it takes a moment for the sound to play. And I can't stand that. I can't stand to have a delay. So what you do is you come in here and you bring these samples down to, say, 512 or something, and that'll take a moment. And that's still too much of a delay. So let's bring them down to 96. All right. Takes a moment for Cakewalk to kind of register that inside, but and that's, I can still sense a tiny bit of delay there. So let's try 64 samples. Now this is 2 milliseconds. So that should actually be enough to fool my ear. So I can't. And that is still a little too much, but it's okay. So so that gives the MIDI priority, okay? But once you start adding like vocal tracks and everything, then what happens is the MIDI has the priority, and the vocal tracks and your reverbs and all the echoes and all of those things, they lose the priority. And so once you have your MIDI track in place, so that you just hit this freeze, okay? And what that does is it turns off the MIDI for this track. It mixes it down into a wave file. And then you do the same thing for this one up here. You freeze this. And you can always unfreeze it if you need to go back and mess with some of these envelopes or change it. You can always go back and unfreeze it. But once you freeze it, then you can come back, and then once it's frozen and you're all done with, and you're ready to start mastering your song, and you have all of your MIDI tracks frozen into wave tracks, then you come back here and you give the emphasis in your, you'll find this, you have to look, I'll show you a place how to find it, another way to find it, so that you can find out how to change these samples. But then you could actually bring it all the way up to, and if your computer keeps locking up during a project, that's why. Because you're getting stuck in between that battle between MIDI and waves, okay? And so now that I have this set, it will play these wave files like golden, and it doesn't matter if I have this set to like 96 or 64, okay? And then I go up and export, that doesn't matter, because when it exports, it just ignores all of that, and it puts all of its brain into making sure all your reverbs and all your tracks play. It won't be any crackles or anything in the export. But we're talking about the computer's resources and ability. And I think the reason why, and I'm not really sure, I'm going to kind of make this up as I'm going along, is because there's thousands of events here. Okay, and for the computer to just come and insert one event, okay, into the middle of that, it has to think, let me see, am I going to put that one event in between event number 6 billion and whatever, or 6 billion and one? And you see, so the computer just all of a sudden freaks out because it's got to put these single events, but when these play, they all kind of like shuffle together like cards, the MIDI. And so it can shuffle them together because it's contiguous, kind of. All right. But when it has to put this one event in the middle of that shuffle, it can't. And so that's why you have to tell it and say, are you going to be able to insert an event in like this and kind of take away the quantization of these wave files, like lower the quality of them so that they're really low bit, and so it can insert an event into them. And so that's how that works. And so when you have this really low, it can shuffle those MIDI events into your waves. And when it have it really high, it can't. And what'll happen is the MIDI events will drop out. They'll stop playing. And so if they're going to stop playing, you might as well just freeze the track. And if you freeze the track, it will turn that MIDI track into a wave file. Then it will shuffle them all together. And your computer can do a really good job shuffling like even 50 and 60 of these wave files together, because it knows what it's doing. It knows when they start and when they start to shuffle in with the other wave files. Okay, it's able to kind of look ahead and say, I'm going to need to shuffle that one then, and this one then, and that one here. Okay, let's go, and it does it. Okay, and so it only needs to shuffle that one event in. But if you have a bunch of them and it's got to shuffle them in with like thousands of little samples, because there are like thousands of samples in this. If you look at this and you zoom way in on this wave file, look at this. Look at how fine it goes. And that's like sample. If I can change this meter to tell me whether if it's samples or whatever, but this up here, it tells me samples. Okay, that's sample 744,000, and that's just on this one track. Okay, so that's how many little samples there are in each of these, and it can shuffle them together. If you have your now, and I'll show you how to find the place. Every audio interface has a different like screen like this, but you go to Edit, Preferences, and then you go to Devices, no, to Driver Settings, then click ASIO Panel, and this will pop up, and it'll be different for your audio interface, but you'll see something that says buffer size. And if you slide it down to a low buffer size, like 64 samples, that's when you can get rid of your latency, and that's when you can record MIDI and it will be right there, as long as you don't have any mastering effects in. If you have mastering effects, you have to turn them off, because they'll hog up this and make an artificial delay. Okay, so you have to right click here and turn your mastering effects off, and then you'll get a very nice MIDI. So you open that up, and if it's really low, but if you go to high, then you're giving the brain of the computer for shuffling all those echoes and reverbs and all that stuff together. You're giving the computer the brain. So this is for listening and playing back. Once you get all your waves frozen, then you go and you go open up your ASIO panel and you go up to as high as you can and you click on that and click OK and click OK. This is for mixing, okay? Once you've done your tracking, once you've done your MIDI and all your MIDI is done, and you take all your MIDI tracks and you freeze them into WAV files. And that really helps too. And you save it, okay? Because you can come back in and unfreeze it, okay? And when you unfreeze it, it loads back the synth, okay? And then it goes back to MIDI. But then if you mix MIDI, if you have it like set to this really high 4,000 samples, your MIDI may even drop out. You'll notice drum beats not even playing. Some tracks won't even play at all. Okay, so it doesn't matter if that's set to like really high. You don't have to set it back to freeze it, because it, like I said, that process, it just ignores all those settings and it mixes it down properly. Mixes down, so you don't have to set it back to freeze it. It will hear all the MIDI, okay, to freeze that track. What's kind of nice is that you have it mixed down so that if you like these output files, I mean these arcade files, if I were to stop paying for the subscription or something, and I were to unfreeze that, it may not open arcade up again. Because I no longer, if the company goes out of business or something, and and so having your tracks and all of your edits to that file and all frozen gives you a little bit more insurance, so you can export your and what if you want to send out stems to some mastering studio? Well, they may not have your synth. They may not have the synth. They may not have that output synth. They may not have access to those. So this gives you a WAV file of that synth. And so you click save and you save it with these frozen tracks so that you have stems. And you can ignore all these squiggly lines. Those no longer apply because they were recorded into this WAV file. And so before you do your mastering, you go in and you freeze all of your tracks and all of the tracks that will allow you to freeze them. I don't freeze my Melodyne tracks. I leave them unfrozen because I just might want to come back and edit them. So I don't freeze my Melodyne tracks. But other than that, all of my synth tracks, all of my MIDI tracks, I freeze them. And then while you're doing your mix down, you set it here in your audio interface. You set that to high so that it will shuffle those just beautifully and with as much fidelity as possible. And that's just so that when you're mixing down, you can hear everything nice and smoothly, okay? And there's no pops and crackles. Now, the more you go towards this level, then when you go to play the WAV files, you're going to hear little pops and crackles and things like that in there, and they're not going to play right. And it's just so basically when you're mixing down that you have the highest quality fidelity to listen to your song, and that it's going to play them. It's kind of like in Premiere when you set it to like 1/4 quality or full quality to play back your video, and so it plays back your video at a lower quality. And if it's playing back your video at a lower quality, then the brain of your computer has the ability to do another thing at the same time. So that's what that is. That's what this freeze. So always freeze your MIDI tracks. Always, always, always. As soon as you think they're what you want in the song, and you can tell by it. And so if you're using a little bit of MIDI and a little bit of wave, like you want to keep some of your MIDI tracks because you're still kind of editing them, then come in here and set it in the middle. Set it like at 512 or something like that. And then that will give you a little bit of latency on your MIDI, but it will lower your wave quality a little bit for the playback, so that you can hear, so that your notes won't cut out, some of your drum beats won't cut out and all, and you find that happy medium between them, so that so that they'll both work together. But before you start mastering, you definitely want to freeze your MIDI tracks, so that then you can set this up, because once you start adding your mastering stuff, that that also, the mastering uses the same brain as your wave files, and so that's gonna complicate the whole MIDI process. So once you start adding a bunch of mastering effects in your master bus, then it's almost like impossible to be able to insert a MIDI and play MIDI without it being like having heavy latency. So what you have to do is right click here and bypass your mastering effects, and then you can go here and set this down to 64 samples and add another MIDI track, record it, and get some fairly good latency where your notes aren't all delayed. And they will be delayed if you don't bypass your your mastering effects rack. They'll sound delayed because the mastering effects rack are buddies with these wave files, okay? And so they work all together, and if you add a bunch of them, you just have to bypass them so they're not working, and then you can come back in and set this to the 64 samples, and then when you click here, you'll be able to play the piano without. There's still a little bit of lag here, and I think it's because it is. It's because here I'm also live casting. I'm casting the sound out through my computer to another computer, and that's why it's creating a stream and live casting, and that's why there's a little bit of. But if I wasn't live casting right now, that would be exact, like it would be. That would be. That would be precise. There would be no latency. It would be just exactly as if I was playing a real piano or something. So, and then once I've recorded the MIDI in, and without latency, so I can actually hear exactly, the notes aren't like echoing and late while I'm playing, then I then I can freeze that track, and then I can come back down here and turn back on my mastering rack, and then go back here and change this back to the high sample rate, so that the brain is working on shuffling rather than working on playing MIDI back to you. Yes, you want to get an external interface. You definitely want to get an external interface, and the reason why, and also you can use ASIO if you download a program called ASIO 4, and I think that's not like FOR, but 4, like the number 4. ASIO 4 all. Okay, it's ASIO number 4 ALL, all. Okay, ASIO for all. And you download it, you install it, and then you can go and you have to restart your computer, and then you can go into Cakewalk and you can select ASIO. And when you go into this part here in preferences, and you go to playback, no, what is it, driver settings, then you have to select, I think it's here. No, it's not. It's in the audio. Audio. No, where is that part? Devices. Oh, here. In devices. Then you have to select ASIO for all. You have to select the ASIO for all. And if it won't let you select it, you have to unselect what's selected, and then you can select ASIO. But what I would suggest is the reason why professional music makers don't use the sound in their computer is because your motherboard and the chip in the main brain and your graphics card, they put off like a disturbance, a electronic disturbance kind of wave around them, and every once in a while you can sort of kind of hear it, but it's not really something most people can hear, but it's there. If you run a meter on it, it's there. It puts noise into all of the electronics on board, your motherboard, and that chip, that sound card chip, is right there with all those electronics, and they create a kind of noise, especially the latest graphics cards like the RTX 3090 and 3080 and 3060 and stuff. They create a lot of noise, and that noise bleeds over into your sound, and that's why everybody and their cousin uses buys an interface, because the interface is away from your computer. It's outside. It's a box that's not even, it's only connected by USB. And you can get an audio interface for probably 30-40 bucks, and even that kind of audio interface, I would look, if you want a really inexpensive audio interface, I would look for one made by Behringer. And if you want, when you find an audio interface that you are thinking about using, and also what's nice about an audio interface is it allows you to plug a mic into it or plug a guitar into it. So, and your sound card on your computer doesn't have a XLR jack. It doesn't have a 1/4-inch jack for like a guitar to plug in. Doesn't have phantom power. And if you buy some kind of doohickey, like, or even a USB mic, they're not as good, the USB mics, because it's plugging, the USB mic is using your sound card and the same electronics in your computer to create the sound. And so that's why you want to plug that into an audio interface that is external from your computer, and then your mic is separate from the electronics in your computer. So and I don't know, every audio interface is ASIO, every single one of them on the market. And I would If you find an audio interface that you're interested in, Steve, you can post a link to it in one of my videos, and I will see it. Hopefully, I'll see it sooner rather than later, but I will see it, and I will go and take a look at it on probably Amazon. You can get them on Amazon. You can, I think you can get them on Newegg. You can get them also at Musician's Friend. Amazon is probably the place to go to get an audio interface. And so they're not very expensive. You can get one probably for 40 or 50 bucks. And you'll use it for you'll just use it. And what's nice about an audio interface is if everything gets really loud and it's like, "Oh my gosh," and you got to go down and click on the little Windows icon, and sometimes your computer's frozen up, and and you can't click on it, and it's blaring music out, and you can't turn it off. Well, your audio interface has a volume, and you just turn it down, and you just reach over and turn it down. And so that's a really nice feature about your audio interface. And you run your speakers out. Your audio interface has little jacks on the back to run to your speakers, and so you can add some nice speakers, maybe some powered speakers to them. So I would definitely go if you're having fun making music and go and spend the money and buy an audio interface. Now if you want a really nice one, a really nice audio interface, I mean, some of the nicest ones on the market right now, I would say, let me see. Let me see what I've got here. Now, about we go here, and the very nicest one. For a really nice audio interface, you're talking about 120 bucks. Uh, and that may be a lot of money, but really for something that you like, for a really nice one, that's like 120 bucks. Now this is called Moto 4, I think it is. I wish I had this one. It's called what's it called? MOTU MOTU 4 MOTU, and they may not be in stock. Yeah, it's actually $229 for the nice one. Okay, this is the really nice one. Okay, this is the best you can get. I mean, in my opinion, for an audio interface. Okay, and it's 220 bucks, and $229 to be exact. I don't think you needed these product protections because it's not likely to go bad. If anything goes wrong, it might be the meters stop blinking, the lights in the meters, and that would be the first thing to go in this. And even if the lights aren't blinking, it'll still work. Okay, so and you have your Cakewalk, which will tell you the same metering inside Cakewalk. If the lights go, that will be the first thing that goes. The bulb will go in these lights. But even if they're gone, you can still tell if it's peaking in Cakewalk. This is, I mean, so $229 for there are better audio interfaces, but they're like, the things that are in them that make them better are a bunch of hype. Okay, and so this is really the creme de la creme of all audio interfaces right here. No, ASIO does not compensate for latency automatically. No, you have to go in and change it. Yeah, it is worth it, and you won't even have to ask me about this. If you go out and purchase this MOTU M4, uh, this USB-C audio interface, you you will be ahead of everybody who doesn't have one. Okay, this will do everything you can just imagine, everything you could imagine. I just bought a Steinberg one, and I wish I had known about this. I'm happy with the Steinberg one, but I wish I had known about the MOTU, because I would have bought this, and I paid the same price for the Steinberg one. And this one has really low noise levels inside. It's just everything about this MOTU is really, really, really nice. And so, and as for ASIO, it does not compensate. It has low latency, but you have to learn to set it for what you're doing. If you're recording, you set it, you come in here, and every audio interface is the same. You set it for low latency. You have to go in and set it. And if and that's where and when you set it for low latency, your wave files are going to they're going to lose the priority, and MIDI will gain the priority. It's the same with any audio interface. And so that's why you freeze all your MIDI tracks into wave files, so that when you're doing your mix downs and you're far away from you're saying, okay, I'm definitely not going to add any more MIDI tracks to this. I got all the tracks. I'm sure I'm not going to add another MIDI. If you want, you can still go back and, like I said, turn off your bin, and you can turn off your effects, your mastering bin, and you can come here and set that back to 64, record your MIDI track, freeze it, and then you go back and set your samples. It sounds like a pain in the butt, but it's what you have to do. And it took me a long time to figure that out, that there was that process that had to be done in the background, and it was really embarrassing, because I would have guitar players come by, and they would start playing, and I would be running through their effects, and there would be that latency problem, and I didn't know I had to turn off my effects bin, my mastering bin. And you might want to, even if you have a bunch of effects, you can go and right click here and into the effects, because you have like reverb and things like that on, in all of these tracks, and maybe other stuff. You right click and you said bypass effects racks of this type, and it will bypass all of your track effects. And you right click in your master bus, one of these master buses, and you say bypass effects of this type, and it will bypass all of your bus effects. And so when you want to turn them on, you just come back in and click that again and uncheck it, and it turns on all of your bus bins. And you right click here, all of your track bins, and then you right click and click that, and it turns back on all of your bus bins. And that's when you're setting this back to 4,000, when you're ready to start listening to your mix again, and have it shuffle all of those wave files together. So you have to go, and that's how you get zero latency, is by shutting off all of your effects and going into your graphics, your sound card, whatever you're using for a card. There should be some kind of when you go into your edit, preferences, driver setting, ASIO panel, or some kind of panel. I'm not sure how this MM thing works. The because I've only used ASIO. Uh, I've tried to use it a few times in the past, but driver settings. Where is that? Devices? No, that's playback and recording. Yeah, it's here. The MME. I'm not sure how that works exactly, but I would assume that it has that same kind of problem where it it when you set the when of switching the priority to your playback of your waves, because if you have all of those waves shuffling together when they're all in their highest quality, that you're talking about thousands and thousands of samples all being sequentially shuffled together, and for it to say, oh, this MIDI thing has got to go right there between sample number. Oh, the computer has just like it freaks out trying to shuffle that MIDI into, and what happens is it misfires, and the MIDI doesn't shuffle right, and so it just you don't even hear your suddenly, and you may not notice it that you're. Yeah, it does compared to MME sucks compared to is yeah, I am self-taught. But the thing is that I learned all of this stuff by going into the forums and asking questions. I don't I and I also had some teachers many years ago, some friends of mine who were like very they were sound engineers and all, and they taught me stuff that I never forgot because it was so amazing to be like 21 years old and know like a 40-year-old like electronics wizard who knew everything about they he introduced me to Cakewalk. He introduced me to taught me about synthesizers, FM synthesizers, how to use them, all kinds of stuff like that. That how the electricity travels through a microphone. Just anything I could say, like why is the sky blue, and oh, that's because, you know. And so it was I could learn anything I wanted from them because they knew so much, and I knew kind of what I wanted to learn, sort of. And it's like, but at that time I didn't know what an audio interface was. I didn't know what a I didn't know what a sequencer was, which is that is what Cakewalk is a sequencer. And what was really cool is that he worked um, in the computer field, uh, and and at one point I went to his work, and I was there while he was programming this thing, this program, making a program that would run the radio station that was at the top of WEEI at the top of the Prudential Building in Boston. It was the very first radio station that used a touch screen, and this was back in 1982, and he was making this program to run a touch screen. And he had a prototype of a sound card made by Creative Labs at his computer office, and there were only two of them in the whole world, and one of them was and he had one of them, and it was the first sound card that ever had duplex mode. And before that, you had to like only one person could talk at a time on a telephone, on like a cell phone, and one person would talk, and then when they stopped talking, then you could talk, and then when you stopped talking, they could talk, but you couldn't hear each other talking at the same time. And the same thing with computers is that you could only have it only went one way. You couldn't have communication two ways. And now, and I held that card in my hand, and so that's what having a computer friend is like, where you can literally, where it wasn't like going to school and having the professor tell me like old information that they learned, that's in some textbook that's like 5 years old. It was actually being at the forefront of technology. So when you go out into the business world, when you go to a university, your knowledge, it all depends on if the university is developing technology, but usually they're just reading from a textbook that's 4 or 5, maybe even 10 years old. I don't know. And so you're learning old information. But if you go out into the business world, they're installing systems and yes, grassroots. They're installing systems that are current, that they're the newest technology and all of that. And so this that's probably one of my biggest claim to fame, was holding that that duplex mode sound card in my hand, because that chip that was in that sound card is now in billions of computers and phones. And there were only 2 of them in the whole world at that time, and I held one of them in my hand. And that to me is one of my claims to fame, because not because, because I held a sound card in my hand, but because I know what that was. I know what it represented. I know today that every computer in the world, every cell phone in the world has that technology that 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 I held in my hand one time when nobody else had it. So and so that's where a lot of the technology comes from. It is my learning comes from uh, actually doing stuff, doing these, having Cakewalk, working with it, and running into problems. And as soon as I have a problem, I go to the Cakewalk forums and I ask a question, say, how do I do this? How do I have a few questions mulling around now in my mind right now that I need to go into the forums and ask about. And there are people smarter than me that know the answers. Uh, but the thing is that Cakewalk, there aren't a lot of people smarter than me, and the reason why is because I have been using Cakewalk since Cakewalk for MS DOS. Before Windows, before even Windows, I was Cakewalk's one of their first customers, okay, to buy Cakewalk. And I owned Cakewalk for DOS on a little, on a, it was actually a 5 1/4 floppy disk, one of those big floppy disks. And it was for a computer that didn't even, it actually, my computer back then did have Windows 3.1 on it, but Cakewalk didn't work in Windows at that time. It only worked in DOS. And so I had Cakewalk for DOS. And so I would have to turn off my computer and put in that disk and start it up and boot Cakewalk for DOS into the RAM, and I can still see what that looked like in my head. And it only did MIDI. It didn't do WAV files. So and so I have been, using Cakewalk since then, for all of my music. And so I don't know everything there is to know. I don't know every hotkey, and I don't really need to know every hotkey because I can work around those things. Some of those things, I just they're not as big a time saver because I wouldn't use them that often anyway, and I can just click and go into the menu and select it. So there are other ways to do things. If you can get around and if you can learn how to put your MIDI in and put your WAV files in, and then set your buffer size. Once everything's been frozen into WAV files, set your buffer size high, and then start adding your bin effects, because that's where they really shine, is with a high buffer. Your mastering effects, and then you follow that. Yeah, actually, I have found the people in the Cakewalk forums. They're now. I'm not sure about the Facebook. There's a Facebook page. They have a moderator there. Okay. But I do have a lot of experience with the forums on the Cakewalk forums, and they are moderated by the developers, the programmers, and the people that have been working with Cakewalk for many, many years. They know so much more than I do about it, and they're very nice. They're very nice. In fact, you can come in and tell them and ask them and say, "Could you please put this particular feature, or could you get rid of that feature, or fix this particular thing that at least from my perspective I think is broken?" And they will. And all of a sudden, you just won't have that problem anymore. The next time you update Cakewalk, that problem will be gone. And they're very, 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 actually very nice. Even the guys that that frequent the forums, they're very smart and they're very nice. And you can also upload. There's a songs part of the forums where you can upload the songs that you've made, and they'll listen to your songs and give you tips. And what's nice about it is they're not like a lot of forums that everybody will just say, "Oh, that's nice," and nobody will dare to come in and say, "Well, really the horns are too loud." And I wouldn't have used horns anyway. I would have used flutes instead. Yeah, it all depends on what you're trying to learn, and if you have a lot to learn, and you go into the forums, and it's like you're drowning, and then it can seem like an inhospitable place, because not only are you trying to find information, but you feel like you're really about ready to die, kind of thing. And just be really patient with them, because they are really nice people in there. They really are. They love Cakewalk. They absolutely love Cakewalk. They know what Cakewalk is. They know that Cakewalk is the best DAW in the world. They know that. That just like I know that. They know that, and they have known it for years. And it's like that kind of thing when you're drowning and somebody's coming out to try and rescue you. You have that thing to want to climb on top of them and get out of the water and use them, and it's like it doesn't matter if they go under, as long as you can get another breath, and just try to recognize that that's what's happening, and be patient with them, because and because this is what happens with me, even with all that I know about Cakewalk, is that they'll suggest something, and I'll kind of like privately say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that?" And because it involves me learning something and having to work to think about what they're saying, and then after I've had about a month, and I will try to do it my way, and I will do it my way through it, and then I'll just finally, my brain will get big enough where I can actually entertain what they said and think about it, and then I'll go back and I'll find out that they're right, and then like months later, once I get it really down and I learn the process really well, there's no way in hell I would ever go back to the old way of doing things. So usually what they say is usually right, okay, and so even though it requires you kind of stretching your mind and trying to grapple with a whole different thing, and what they say is probably right. It may not fix what your problem is, but what they're saying is usually right, anyway. So you'll learn something from what they say. They may not be able to right off the bat, because it's a very complicated thing, pinpoint the problem you're having, but what they're saying is usually right. So that's the thing, is to always give what they say some really good thought, because I've rarely have found that they have been wrong about anything. So all right, I think that's gonna do it. I'm gonna have a salad for dinner, and so I hope this has been helpful. I think I got off on a tangent towards the end, but I would yeah, thank you, Steve. That's very nice, very humble of you, and to say that you I guess you're right. That's very sweet. So now maybe I'm not. Maybe there are a few of them lurking around on there, but I've never found them. I found that even if maybe their workaround is obscure, it's still something pertinent, because it gives you one other workaround. Okay, it gives you one other viewpoint, one other possibility to do something, and so. And sometimes maybe they're just showing off because they know, and I don't think that's the case, but some of them know all kinds of really obscure things, and so I don't think they're actually showing off, but in a way it might seem showy. Okay, so but and the so yeah, well, I'm going to be here. I will be here with Cakewalk. Write down your answers, and if I were you, I would go out, because the last few times that I checked Amazon for one of these, they were not in stock, and because of this, and this $229, that's not at one point I came in here, and it was like $400 for this, because there weren't any available, and the scalpers were selling them for like twice the price. This is the actual price for it, and so if you can afford it, get one of these. All right, and you will be very pleased with it. You can plug a regular mic in, or you can plug a phantom powered. It's got phantom powered, separate phantom power buttons on each one. It's got a headphone thing where you can plug your headphones in, and an independent headphone volume that's an actual knob. So you can turn the speaker volume up or down, or you can turn the headphone volume up or down. Turn off the speakers, use the headphones when you're recording. turn on this when you're mixing down, and I always listen to a mix in headphones, and like I might, whatever I prefer, like if I use my speakers to mix do the mix before I export it, I then do the mix in the headphones. Usually I do my mix in my headphones, and then I take the headphones out, and I then do the mix in with my speakers. And the reason why I do the speaker mix last is because my speakers tell me how loud the voice is supposed to be. My headphones. So, all right. So, yeah, let me know how if you order it. Let me know. You can leave as many chat as much chatting as you want for comments in my on these videos, okay? And I'll find them, okay? It notifies me when you leave a message. So let me know how that works out. So I'm seeing $229, but it'll probably be like $10 in for tax, or $5 in tax. So yeah, let me know how that works out, and write a list of your questions and send them to me in a comment, okay? Any questions you have, if you run into any questions, I will try my best to help you and if you come up with a question, it may inspire me, to make a 2-hour long video like I did here. So in for arcade. So I've got some really exciting stuff that I'm going to be sharing soon, okay? And it may actually be like really, really liven up your songs, okay? So I've got some really intense stuff that I'm going to be sharing in the next couple of videos on some instruments, okay? Some instruments that you can purchase and that will make your music sound like, oh my God, okay? So that's coming up soon, all right? So so I will be back again, maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'll make another video here for Cakewalk and share some more tips. And please like the video. I need likes. So if you can get in and give the video a like, I would appreciate that. And for anybody else who's coming in and watching the video after it's made, thanks for watching. And thank you, Steve, for keeping me company during this and making it really, it's really nice to have somebody come in and be here when I'm doing these videos. So I can't thank you enough for being here and keeping me company while and helping to direct the direction, to point the direction of the video, and it gives the video a more personal touch. So thank you for being here, and I will see you again probably, well, in the next video if you're around, if you can stop in. So I'm going to now head out, and again, leave your comments and like the video and subscribe. Click the bell. This is for people who haven't. Click the bell next to the subscribe button to get notifications, and you will get a notification if I go live again. And thank you again, and you take care, Steve, and I will be back again soon with more new tutorials. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go now. All right, bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you.